Thanksgiving that year didn't smell like turkey. It reeked of betrayal. Colton, my son, stood at the head of the dinner table, wine glass in hand, eyes cold as stone. "Dad," he said, voice clear and cruel, "you're no longer part of this family." Silence hit like a slap. Forks froze midair. Raina, his wife, offered a smug little smile. I didn't flinch. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped "Go live." "If you want the truth out in the open," I said, "let's make sure everyone hears it." When Clara died, the house went silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the kind that crept into your chest and sat there like a stone. For 35 years, Clara filled every corner of our home with warmth, her humming in the kitchen, her soft scolding when I forgot to put my boots by the door, the way she always left a light on in the hallway because she knew I hated the dark. When cancer took her, it took all of that too. For a while I tried to hold it together. I cooked badly. I watered her garden and spoke to her roses like a fool. I left the porch light on every night, out of habit more than hope. Colton called often. He'd say, "You shouldn't be alone, Dad, let us help." I resisted. I didn't want pity. But then came that stormy January night when I slipped in the driveway and cracked my ribs. A neighbor found me hours later. The next day, Colton and Raina moved in. At first, it was comforting. My son under my roof again. Raina helping in the kitchen, making casseroles Clara would have actually approved of. They brought laughter back into the walls. Or so I thought. But changes came quietly. Clara's piano was moved into storage. To make space. Her china cabinet vanished, too old-fashioned, Raina said. Colton turned the study into his home office, and I noticed my books slowly disappearing from the shelves. Even their language changed. Raina started saying things like, "Our house needs an upgrade." Colton once referred to the bedroom I'd shared with Clara as the master suite, then offered to repaint it in a more modern tone. It hit me one morning when I came downstairs to find the locks changed. Raina smiled, handing me a new set of keys. "Just upgraded the security system," she said. "You'll love the convenience." But what convenience requires locking out the man who built the place? I didn't say anything then. I took the keys. I smiled. But something in my gut twisted. That night, I searched the trash bin out back. Don't ask me why. Call it a hunch. And found a torn envelope. It was addressed to a real estate firm. Inside, a printed email from Raina. "The owner is elderly but cooperative. Once paperwork clears, we can list by spring." I wasn't alone anymore. I was being erased. For a while, I truly believed they cared. Colton started calling me Pop again, like he used to when he was a boy. Raina brought me chamomile tea every night, said it helped her own grandfather sleep. They laughed at my jokes, asked for stories about Clara, even let me pick the movie on Friday nights, black and white classics I thought no one their age could stand. It worked. There were days I wondered if maybe I'd been too harsh in my suspicions. Maybe I was the one seeing ghosts and shadows, reading malice where there was none. Maybe grief was twisting my mind. But the act wore thin. Little things chipped away at the illusion. I'd find unopened mail in the trash. Notices from my pension plan. Bank statements marked urgent. When I asked about them, Raina would coo, "Oh, I took care of that for you." She never said what that was. Then came the blueprint. Colton laid it on the kitchen table one morning, all smiles. "Dad, this place needs a facelift. We're thinking new floors, smart wiring, maybe knock out that back wall for more space. Look, our friend's a contractor, already gave us a deal." The blueprint wasn't a renovation. It was a gutting. They wanted to strip out the oak floors Clara had polished every spring, tear down the sunroom she designed herself. "It's dark and outdated," Raina chimed in. "We could turn it into a glass extension. Much more modern." I felt a knot twist in my stomach. "This is my house," I said quietly. "And Clara's. You don't get to redesign our lives." Colton's face hardened. "You're being dramatic, Dad. This place is falling apart." "I built this place with my hands," Raina snorted. "And now those hands tremble pouring cereal. Come on, Silas, you've had a good run. Let the next generation make it better." The air in the room turned cold. Colton muttered under his breath, "You always do this, always stuck in the past." I stared at them two people I barely recognized, and for the first time, I stopped doubting myself. This wasn't grief. This wasn't paranoia. This was betrayal, dressed in kindness. And it was only beginning. That night, after the blueprint argument, I couldn't sleep. I sat alone in the den, the same den Clara once called our little library. The light was low, the room colder without her. My fingers grazed the worn armrest of her favorite chair, the one Colton had called an eyesore just last week. And suddenly, I was back there, in the middle of a summer afternoon, maybe 20 years ago. Clara was on her knees, hands covered in sawdust, carefully varnishing the oak baseboards she'd insisted on customizing. She hummed while working some old jazz tune she loved, her brow furrowed in that intense way she always had when doing something by hand. "Why not just buy the pre-cut stuff?" I had asked. "Because this is our home, Silas," she replied without looking up. "It should carry our fingerprints, not just our furniture." Colton had been 10, maybe 11, running around barefoot with a hammer too big for his hands. He kept trying to help, mostly making a mess. But when Clara finally let him paint a single wooden beam on the porch, his face lit up like Christmas morning. He had said, "I helped build this house. This is our forever house, right?" Clara ruffled his hair, leaving a smudge of paint. "It is," she said. "And someday you'll bring your kids here. Show them what love built." The memory squeezed my chest. That same beam Colton once painted, he now wanted to tear it down for a more open layout. The sunroom where Clara used to sit and read Agatha Christie novels every Sunday now just wasted space in their new design. And that boy, the one with wide eyes and stubby fingers, who once felt pride over a patch of chipped paint, he had become a man who saw our home as market value. I blinked back the sting in my eyes. It wasn't just the house they were erasing. It was her. And maybe, in their minds, me too. But I remembered. I remembered every nail, every laugh, every splintered finger Clara kissed better. And that memory, unlike everything else, was still mine. Still real. They could redesign the walls, but they couldn't rewrite the history etched into them. I didn't go to Eldon right away. Truth is, it took finding my wedding photo torn, folded, and stuffed in a drawer that finally pushed me over the edge. Eldon Pike had been my best friend since college. We'd built things together, homes, businesses, bad fishing boats. He was also a retired estate attorney, someone I trusted more than anyone left on earth. We met at the corner booth in O'Malley's Diner. Still smelled like burnt toast and cheap bacon. He greeted me with that crooked grin of his and a, "You look like hell, Silas." I slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside, the house deed, my pension papers, and a printout of the email I'd found in the trash. He scanned everything, slow and silent. Then he looked up. "You need to be very careful," he said. "They're not just trying to take over the house. They're maneuvering to prove you're no longer mentally competent." I froze. "If they get guardianship," Eldon continued, "you lose legal control of your home, your finances, even your freedom. They could put you in a facility, sell everything, and you'd have no say." The words hit harder than any insult Raina ever threw at me. "But I'm not senile," I said, almost too defensively. He nodded. "I know that. But this isn't about truth, Silas. It's about paperwork, perception, and pressure." He leaned in closer. "You need to document everything, every conversation, every move they make. Start building a timeline, and we're going to create a firewall, legal, financial, and personal." That night, I sat in Clara's old sewing room now, mostly empty, and started writing. Names, dates, words they said, even looks. I recorded voice memos, saved receipts, photographed the way my books had disappeared from the shelves. It felt strange, spying in my own home. But when your son becomes a stranger, and your house becomes a battlefield, there's no room left for comfort. Eldon called it a reverse blueprint, not to build something new, but to prove what they were quietly tearing down. I never imagined I'd have to protect myself from my own flesh and blood. But I wonder, am I the only one? If you've ever felt yourself slowly erased in your own home, you're not alone. Eldon didn't just warn me. He handed me a name. "Vernon Cade," he said. "If anyone knows how to keep your assets airtight, it's him." So I went. Vernon's office sat high in a glass tower overlooking downtown, clean, clinical, powerful, the kind of place that didn't blink twice at Betrayal. He wore tailored suits and spoke in quiet, deliberate sentences. "You've got leverage," he said after reviewing my case, "but we need to act fast." We started building a fortress. Step 1. A living trust. All my assets, house, pension, insurance sifted out of my personal name. Step 2. A new will. The old one, written when Clara was still alive, left everything to Colton. Vernon didn't even ask. You want that removed? I nodded once. Everything changes. Step 3. Secure my finances. New banks, new passwords. Lock out all joint access. That's when the twist came. Vernon pulled up a flagged transaction on one of my old accounts. This one's still under joint ownership, he said. Your son's been using it. I leaned forward. The statement glowed on the screen. Luxury spa. Retreat. 2 guests. $2,700. Miami. Last weekend. My stomach dropped. That was the same weekend Raina claimed she was at a leadership summit in Tampa. Colton had said he was watching football with friends. Now here was my Monier money paying for someone's little escape. Was it them? Were they traveling together, lying in tandem? Or was one of them cheating on the other and using my resources to fund their filth? It didn't matter. Not really. What mattered was this. They'd look me in the eyes every morning over breakfast smiling, pouring my coffee while stealing from me behind my back. Vernon stayed clinical. This strengthens your case. Clear evidence of financial abuse. But I wasn't thinking about courtrooms. I was thinking about Colton's 7th birthday, when he cried because I forgot the icing on his cake and Clara made me drive across town to fix it. I was thinking about the boy who once held my hand when crossing the street. Now he was robbing me blind. I walked out of that office with a folder full of documents and a heart full of something colder than anger. Not hatred, not rage. Just sorrow, bone deep and quiet. I waited until the house was asleep. Colton snored like a chainsaw. Raina always wore earbuds. It wasn't hard. I crept past the hallway, barefoot, heart pounding like a thief in his own home. Their bedroom door creaked louder than I liked, but I slipped in. I didn't need long. Inside the closet, a shoebox stuffed with envelopes passed, due notices from the bank, final warnings on maxed-out credit cards, threats of foreclosure, all addressed to Colton. So much for his investment portfolio. In the nightstand, I found a folder marked Receipts. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Designer shoes, jewelry, weekend getaways. One was to the same luxury spa in Miami, the same one from the transaction. And then, the phone. Unlocked. Raina had always been careless with privacy. In the Messages app, I saw the name. Kyle. Kyle Walker Colton's best friend since high school. The guy who gave the best man speech at their wedding. The one who always called me Mr. Hale, even when I asked him to stop. The latest message read, once the old man's out of the picture, everything is ours. Finally. I felt the blood drain from my face. Not just betrayal. Calculation. I scrolled up photos, innuendos, plans. This wasn't some fling. It was a blueprint for replacement of Colton, of me, of this whole damn life. And that's when a colder thought crept in. Had Colton seen these messages? Did he know? Had he chosen to look the other way? Or worse, was this some twisted 3-way deal? A way for him to escape his debts while Raina cleaned house? I sat down on their bed, stunned. My son, my flesh and blood, might not just be blind. He might be complicit. I thought back to the spa Chargatwo guests. Was it Raina and Kyle? Or was Colton paying for her silence? A payoff to keep things tidy while he bided his time? I didn't know what hurt worse. That Colton might be a fool, or that he might not. I took photos of everything, forwarded the messages to my secure drive. Then I closed the drawers gently, turned off the lamp, and left the room. And for the first time since Clara died, I realized I wasn't just fighting to protect my legacy. I was fighting to prove I wasn't the crazy one. 3 days before Thanksgiving, my phone rang just after sunrise. It was Mabel, Clara's best friend, her wedding maid of honor, the woman who once knitted matching scarves for all our grandkids. She didn't call unless it was serious. Her voice was brisk, but strained. Silas, I was at a cocktail event last night in of those charity mixers Raina hosts. It was supposed to be harmless. She hesitated. She didn't recognize me. I didn't introduce myself. Just played dumb and drank her wine. Then, the bomb. Raina was telling a few friends they're planning something big for Thanksgiving. Said they're hosting it in Dad's house this year to make it feel more symbolic. I blinked. Hosting what? A formal family dinner, Mabel said. Except it's not about the turkey, it's about you. My stomach clenched. She said once the whole family's gathered, they'll use the opportunity to bring up your behavior. Say you've become unstable, slurring words, forgetting names, getting aggressive. Mabel's voice lowered. She called it the perfect stage in front of everyone, so it feels like a unified decision. After dinner, they plan to take a vote, push for emergency guardianship, file papers first thing Friday. I went cold. They want to ambush you in your own home, Mabel said. Use your reactions, your confusion, your pride against you. And then a pause. A deeper worry. There's more, she added. Raina saw a framed photo of me and Clara on the mantel. I think it shook her. She got real quiet, then made an excuse to leave early. I think she realized I might have heard too much. Mabel told me that the next morning, Colton showed up unusually early at my door, holding pastries. Smiling, casual, too casual. He asked if I was feeling clear today, if I remembered the grocery list. They weren't being kind. They were checking for leaks. And in that moment, I knew Thanksgiving wasn't a dinner. It was a performance. And I was the target. I wasn't waiting anymore. For weeks, I'd watched them prepare the stage rehearsing lines, planting stories, setting the scene. Now it was my turn. I started small, gathering the pieces. The audio clip of Raina's drunken confession recorded at her charity party. The quality wasn't studio grade, but you could hear every word. Guardianship, vote, he'll never see it coming. Then came the financials. With Vernon Cade's help, I accessed bank statements Colton forgot were still traceable to my name. Charges piled high. Overdue notices, maxed cards, missed mortgage payments on their second home things no responsible son should be hiding while claiming to care for his aging father. Then, the text messages. Raina and Kyle hadn't just flirted. They'd planned. Once the old man's out, one message read, "It's you and me, finally." That one stung, but it sealed the narrative. This wasn't neglect. It was orchestration. I needed more than evidence. I needed spectacle. So I started making calls. First, Vernon. "You'll be at Thanksgiving?" I asked. He chuckled. "Wouldn't miss it. Legal documents in hand." Second, Mabel. "I need you there." As Clara's voice. She agreed without pause. "I'll sit front row." Third, my old neighbor Paul. He'd overheard plenty whispers through thin walls, tense conversations in driveways. And finally, a local reporter I trusted from the town paper. No headlines yet, just presence. Come have a meal, take notes. That's all I ask. By the time I closed my notebook, the chessboard was set. They thought I was losing grip. They thought I was isolated, senile, irrelevant. But they forgot one thing. This house wasn't built by fools. And I'd spent my entire life learning how to survive storms. This one would be no different. As I sealed the last folder and slid it into my briefcase, I looked at Clara's photo on the mantel. "This one's for us," I whispered. And for the first time in months, I smiled. The dining room glowed with soft golden lights. Silverware polished, napkins folded like swans. Everything carefully curated for show. Colton stood at the head of the table, hands resting on a glass of Pinot. His voice was calm, almost solemn. "We've come together tonight, as a family," he began, "to make a difficult but necessary decision." I watched his eyes scan the room, his lawyer on standby near the hallway, Raina seated beside him, lips pressed in a gentle, practiced line. He continued, "After careful observation, and for the safety of everyone involved, we've decided together that it's time for Dad to transition into a care facility." A hush. Colton turned toward me. "We know this isn't easy, but we believe this is the best step for your health and dignity." Raina nodded, eyes misty. Fake. I stood up slowly, letting the chair creak under the silence. They thought I was just an old man, one they could move like furniture. But over the past few weeks, while they rehearsed Betrayal, I'd rehearsed something else. I'd learned how to live stream, taught myself the app, practiced the angle. I even read online threads about how viral moments start not with shouting, but with truth, timed right. Social media, I realized, doesn't care how old you are. It cares whether you've been wronged, and whether you're brave enough to show it. I pulled out my phone, tapped once. The red light blinked. Live. Faces shifted. Raina's jaw tensed. I placed the phone on the center of the table, screen facing up. Then I pressed play. Her voice filled the room. We just need to push him into the nursing home. Then Colton can sign the house over clean quick. Gasps. Aunt Sheila's fork clattered against her plate. Cousin Leo stared, mouth open. Even the lawyer blinked. Raina's face drained of color. What is this? Colton said, stepping forward. I raised a brow. Oh, you don't recognize your wife's voice? Once the old man's out, the clip continued, everything's ours. I looked straight at the camera. To anyone watching, this is what betrayal looks like. Within minutes, the live stream had over 800 viewers, neighbors, former coworkers, church friends. The comments started flying. This is elder abuse. They tried to trap him. She's cheating too? Colton lunged to turn off the phone. I was faster. Vernon Cade stepped forward. Touch that, and it's tampering with evidence. Silas Hale might have been their target. But now, he was the one flipping the script with the whole world watching. And for those out there folks my age, maybe a little gray, maybe a little tired, don't underestimate the tools these kids use every day. Learn them. Use them. Because one day, like me, you might need them more than you think. The silence after the live stream was louder than the video itself. No one touched their wine. No one dared move. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a leather folder worn on the edges but solid. I laid it flat on the table and slowly flipped it open. Since we're airing things tonight, I said, let's go all the way. I slid a document toward Colton. Vernon Cade stepped forward, clearing his throat. That is a court-issued eviction notice. Effective immediately, Mr. Colton Hale and Mrs. Raina Hale have 15 days to vacate the premises. Colton's face twisted. Eviction? You can't. I can, I interrupted. And I did. The property was never legally transferred. You just assumed it was yours. Next came the second file. Effective as of this morning, Vernon continued, all joint accounts and financial instruments tied to Silas Hale have been frozen. A full audit is underway. Raina looked like she'd been slapped. But our expenses or mortgage? You should have thought about that before booking luxury spa retreats, I said calmly. And last, I added, pulling out one final envelope, sealed in red wax. My will. They leaned in instinctively, hoping, praying for one last slice. I smiled, cold, certain. In the event of my death, I read aloud, all remaining assets, including this home, my pensions, investments, and belongings will be donated to the Clara Hale Community Trust, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting elderly citizens left behind by their families. A beat. Then, too, no inheritance, I said flatly. No house, no fund, nothing. Raina stood up, livid. You're doing this out of spite. No, I said, meeting her gaze. I'm doing this out of clarity. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about boundaries. It was about truth. It was about reminding everyone at that table and everyone watching online that just because someone is old doesn't mean they're weak. And just because you call it family doesn't mean it's love. The silence after my final words stretched like a taut wire. Then snap. Colton rose from his seat, voice cracking under the weight of panic. This is insane. You think this proves anything? He's manipulating the whole story. He's old, confused. His hands trembled as he gestured wildly toward the phone still recording. No one here believes that nonsense, right? He said, searching Fash's cousins, his aunts, even his childhood friend Peter. We're his family. But the faces weren't nodding. They weren't smiling. They were staring. Hard. Raina stood slowly, brushing invisible dust from her dress. Her voice clipped but trembling. He's fabricating this. You all know how lonely he's been. How forgetful. This is an act. It's sad, really. That's when the woman at the end of the table stood. Short hair, blazer. No one had spoken to her all evening. She raised a press badge. Cassandra Lowe, local investigative reporter. I was invited to document this evening as an impartial witness. She held up her phone. I've reviewed the recording Mr. Hale played both the live stream and the original file provided. It's authentic. Verified. Raina's lips parted. Colton stepped back. Aunt Sheila's face darkened. You tried to lock him away. Sell this house. For what? Spa weekends and secret affairs? Cousin Leo shook his head. I always thought you were the golden son. Turns out you're just a coward. People began rising from their chairs quiet at first, then murmuring, then moving away entirely. Plates untouched. Conversations cut. They weren't just disappointed. They were disgusted. Colton's arms dropped to his sides, his voice barely a whisper now. I didn't want this. Raina turned to him, eyes blazing. You said he'd never figure it out. You said he was too far gone. He didn't answer. He couldn't. And in that final moment standing in the house, he tried to steal, surrounded by people who now saw him for what he was. Colton Hale looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, not as a villain, but as a man who gambled his soul and lost everything. Before the room could fully dissolve into whispers and judgment, Colton raised his voice again, this time not angry, but raw. You all think we're monsters, he said, eyes wide, voice shaking. But have you ever taken care of an aging parent who forgets where the keys are, leaves the stove on, or asks the same question 10 times a day? His words weren't excuses, they were wounds. I've been trying to hold this house together, my job, my marriage while Dad shut down, refused help, barked at doctors. He looked around, breath shallow. We were drowning, and no one came. Then Raina stepped forward. I never signed up for this, she said, jaw tight. I married into a family that had traditions, warmth, then watched it fall apart. I cleaned up after his accidents. I handled the bills. I cooked while he complained the food wasn't like Clara's. She glanced at me, her voice cracking. And you never even looked me in the eye when I tried. For a brief moment, silence returned, this time not out of fear, but conflict, because somewhere, beneath their greed and deception, there had been resentment, fatigue, maybe even grief, but none of it justified the plan. And they knew it. So did everyone else. But it was too late, because pain doesn't erase intent. And everyone in that room had already heard the recordings, seen the bank statements, watched the lies unravel. Aunt Sheila stood again. Then why did you fake his doctor's note? Uncle Robert added. Why did you tell the realtor the house would be vacant by December? No one bought it anymore. Not the sorrow, not the excuses, not the carefully rehearsed confessions. Because when you scheme in the dark, you don't get to cry in the light and expect forgiveness. The morning after the disaster, the house was still. Birdsong outside, a breeze through the hallway, and silence. Raina had packed during the night. I heard her footsteps light, rushed, like a thief sneaking out after the alarm's been tripped. No goodbyes. No confrontation. Not even a knock on my door. Kyle had already blocked her. The live stream had gone viral overnight. One of his clients forwarded the clip with the message, "This your future?" By dawn, he'd cut her off completely, calls ignored, messages unread. The man she gambled everything for had disappeared like smoke. And now, she had nothing. No house, no money, no lover. Even Colton, stunned and humiliated, had gone to stay with a friend, too ashamed to speak to her. She left through the back, carrying a single suitcase, her heels clicking softly on the driveway as the sun rose behind her. No ride, no friends waiting, just a long walk down a quiet street. For a woman who once controlled rooms with her smile, her exit was quieter than any apology she never gave. She had built her life on manipulation and watched it collapse, brick by poisoned brick. In the end, she didn't lose to me. She lost to the very lies she crafted. And as the door closed behind her, Raina Hale became the perfect cautionary tale, a symbol of what happens when ambition rots into cruelty, and masks finally fall. As she disappeared into the morning light, I found myself thinking, not about her, but about him, Colton. Had he known? Did he know Raina was cheating? Or was he too afraid to look? Or worse, had he known all along, and simply tolerated it? Because losing her meant losing the scheme? There had been signs. Moments of silence between them that didn't feel like marital comfort. Trips taken separately. A dinner where Kyle laughed too loudly at her jokes while Colton stared into his wine. I wondered, bitterly, was Colton ever truly loyal to me? Or had he traded that loyalty long before Raina came into the picture? That was the worst part of betrayal. Not the act itself, but how many times I'd missed it, and how long he'd let me believe I hadn't. The house was quiet again. No more arguments, no whispers behind closed doors, just the sound of the old clock ticking in the hallway, steady, unfazed. Silas stood in the living room holding a framed photo of Clara. Her smile, forever kind, caught the morning light through the window. With care, he hung it back above the mantel where it once belonged, like her spirit watchful, constant. Then he sat down at his desk and began to write. Colton, the letter began, I don't need your forgiveness. I'm not asking for understanding. I'm not even sure I need your love anymore. I only need to know that I did not stay silent in the face of wrongdoing, that I protected what your mother and I built. He paused, then added softly, and I need to live with myself, fully, cleanly, before God. He folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and placed it near the front door. Outside, snow began to fall soft, silent flakes blanketing the lawn. The same lawn Colton used to roll across in summer as a boy, the same one Raina planned to pave over. Silas poured himself a cup of tea. No sugar. Clara liked it that way. He sat down in the old armchair by the fireplace. The flames crackled, warm and alive. A Bible lay open beside him. Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. He had read it to Clara on the night she passed, and now, once more, it comforted him. They had tried to take his home, his dignity, his name, but they failed. Because in the end, betrayal stories do not belong to the betrayers. They belong to those who survive. This house wasn't just bricks and beams. It was memory. It was testimony. And now, it stood unchallenged. Some people watch betrayal stories unfold and wonder how anyone gets back up. But Silas did. With God's strength, with his wife's memory, with quiet, unwavering conviction. This wasn't just the end of Raina's manipulation or Colton's weakness. It was the beginning of Silas's peace. He wasn't a man discarded. He was a man reclaimed. Another log cracked in the fire. He looked out at the snow and whispered, Clara, we're still home. If you've ever been pushed aside, silenced, or made to feel like you no longer matter, remember, betrayal stories are not endings. They are beginnings in disguise. And if you hold tight to faith, to memory, to truth, no one can ever evict you from the life God gave you.